What's going on, everyone? Nick Smith-Koblitz here from Paranormal Investigations, and today we're talking all about electronic voice phenomenon, or EVPs for short. What are they? Where did the term originate? What are some of the varying theories that explain them? And how do you record them? I'm also going to be sharing with you guys some of my favorite tips and tricks that you can use on your investigations to record the best EVPs possible. Now, if you're an investigator or have watched nearly any horror movie in the past 10 years, you've probably heard the term EVP before. EVP is short for electronic voice phenomenon, a term popularized by the Swedish painter turned paranormal researcher Fredrik Jurgensen in 1959. And it's used to describe human-like vocalizations that are recorded on audio that were not heard or intended at the time the recording was made. In short, they're sounds that show up on audio recordings when no one was talking. Sometimes they'll sound like a single word or phrase, as if you were eavesdropping on a conversation. But other times they seem to come as direct responses to somebody speaking, sometimes bearing the voice or other characteristics of somebody who was once alive. This led paranormal researchers and enthusiasts to speculate EVPs may in fact be spirit voices. Many early examples of EVP were recorded in the 1950s on reel-to-reel magnetic tape, the precursor technology to cassettes. Tapes like these are coated with a layer of ferric oxide, and recordings are made when the electrical signals output from a microphone displace molecules on the tape, leaving a distinctive pattern. When played back, this pattern is converted back to an electrical signal, and finally, output is sound waves that we hear. Because of the magnetic nature of the tapes themselves and the ability of EVPs to seemingly bypass the microphone and imprint themselves directly on the tapes, paranormal investigators called them electronic voice phenomenon. On the flip side of the coin, however, there are numerous factors and natural phenomenon that can cause anomalies with audio equipment, creating what we think may be EVPs. Using poor quality audio recorders or microphones that produce a lot of signal noise, reusing old cassette tapes, and good old-fashioned human contamination can all be mistaken for something supernatural. That being said, over the 16 years I've been an investigator, some of the EVPs that I've heard and recorded remain some of the most compelling evidence of ghosts or hauntings that I've come across. So let's jump into recording. How do you record an EVP? Well, the first thing you're going to need, obviously, is some kind of recording device. Now, you can go the digital route. These will record onto internal memory or micro SD cards, or you can go the old school analog route and use a cassette recorder. I love analog recorders. Personally, I think using magnetic tape is truly the best medium for trying to capture EVP. I've always had much more luck with analog. If you are using a cassette recorder, make sure that you're using a fresh tape and only record onto one side of the tape. Although cassettes do allow for dual side recording, the separation between tracks is not always perfect, and sometimes you can get sounds that bleed across from one track to another. And this contamination can give you false positives. Now, when you start a cassette recorder with a fresh tape, there's usually about a 10-second delay between the start of the tape and the actual recording area. So when you use a cassette recorder with a fresh tape, hit record. I usually like to count to about 15. Then I know I'm good to go and I won't miss anything. Something else to keep in mind with cassette recorders is they are going to need periodic maintenance. Go get yourself a cleaning cassette. They don't cost too much, and one will probably last you for several months. And just before your investigation, run it through the recorder for about 20 seconds or so. This will ensure that your tape heads are clean and you'll be getting the most out of your device. If you're going the digital route, however, make sure you set your recorder to the highest quality rate and the highest bit rate possible, so that you get the most information and the clearest recording possible. If you're using a Zoom recorder like this guy here, I like to set it to WAV, file type recording, never MP3 if I can avoid it, and make sure that my low cut filter is off. You never want to record with any kind of noise canceling filters because you'll lose vital frequency information in your recording. Then set your bit rate as high as it will go. This is your sampling rate, and you want to record as much information as possible. Keep in mind though, with a higher bit rate, this will mean your memory card won't have as much space. So I would recommend getting at least a 32 gigabyte card. My team likes the SanDisk Ultras. They have a really high data transfer rate, and they've worked great for us. Now basically every recorder these days has a built-in microphone, and some are pretty good. If you're using the Zoom or the Tascam Prosumer series recorders, these guys have got pretty decent built-in mics. But if you're using a cassette recorder, I would definitely say go and get yourself an external mic, even if it's a fairly inexpensive one. Otherwise, you're going to end up recording a lot of sound from the internal mechanisms of the recorder. It'll sound tinny and just terrible, and you'll actually end up losing information. So now you're ready to start recording. The last thing you're going to decide is what kind of technique you're going to use. And there are two basic methods called active and passive recording. To conduct a passive recording, you select a room or spot where a ghost has been seen or paranormal activity has been experienced. You start your recorder, place it in that selected spot, then leave the area undisturbed and come back later and review your findings. This is a great technique to use in areas where auditory phenomena have been reported. Disembodied voices, footsteps, things of that nature. Those are situations where you'll really benefit from audio monitoring. If you're taking an active approach, you turn your recorder on, then ask questions out loud to any ghosts that might be present. Yes or no questions work really well, or questions that only require 1 or 2 words as an answer. After your session, you review your recording, and sometimes you hear what sound like responses to the questions you were asking that you didn't hear at the time. Some investigators like to have an audio recorder on them and recording the entire time they're conducting an investigation, both asking questions actively and just letting it record as they walk around and observe. No matter what tools you're using or what technique you're using, there are a few extra little tips that you can employ to get the very most out of your EVP work. The first would be good record keeping. Always timestamp your recordings and say when and where you are. This may seem pretty basic, but lots of us will run multiple cameras and recorders on investigations. And sometimes things get lost in the shuffle. It only takes a second, and this will save you a heck of a lot of heartache down the road. My second tip is tagging. Always tag or mark any sounds that you might hear or make. If you're on an investigation and you laugh or cough or click on a flashlight or fart, which I'm sure none of us do on investigations, you always want to make note of that out loud so the recorder can hear you. We make so many sounds on investigations, and we need to be able to keep track of and account for our personal noise pollution so we can avoid false positives during our review. Likewise, if you hear a dog bark outside or a refrigerator kick on, make note of it so you don't mistake that sound for something supernatural when you're reviewing your evidence. Tip number 3 is use a second recorder whenever possible. Even if they're 2 different brands or one is digital and one is analog, run 2 if you can. If one goes down, you have a backup. But also, if you record an anomaly with 2 devices, this shows that it was not an isolated technical malfunction. Something is affecting multiple pieces of equipment. Something my team's been experimenting with for years is comparing the results from digital and analog recording mediums to see if one is truly better than the other at documenting paranormal activity. So now you're back from your investigation, you have all your audio files, and you're ready to review. Now, lots of investigators like to upload everything directly to the computer so they can enhance them. But you should always listen to your recordings on the original device first before moving into your digital workspace. Whenever you export video or audio files from a camera or recorder to a computer, you're compressing them. Sometimes just slightly, but you're still compressing them, and in the process, losing information. So to be safe, always listen to your recordings on the original device first. Then if you find an EVP, you can move that onto your computer and store and enhance it as needed. If you do discover any EVPs, write down the timestamp and what you believe is being said, then play it for a friend or colleague, but don't tell them what you believe is being said. This helps prevent our biases from influencing how others view our evidence. If I go and record an EVP that I think says, "Hey, I'm Bob," then play it for my friend and say, "Listen to this EVP. It sounds like, hey, I'm Bob." I've conditioned that person to hear the same thing. If we play it for them blind and they hear the same thing, that makes your evidence much more compelling. So that's it, guys. Those are my tips and tricks to get you the best EVP recordings possible. Full disclaimer, I'm not guaranteeing that you will record EVPs, but you will be using the techniques to get you the clearest and cleanest recordings. If you want to see how my team conducts an EVP session, go check out our web series, Paranormal, link in the description below and on one of the little screen thingies. Hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video, subscribe to our channel if you want to see more, and I will see you guys next time. Peace!